Some things die slower than empires. They rot from the inside, a quiet decay that hollows out the bone until the whole structure is a brittle shell, waiting for a single sharp impact to turn it to dust. I knew this in my marrow long before I knew it in my mind. I was a cartographer, a man of lines and measurements, a servant of an empire that believed the world could be tamed by mapping it. We drew our borders on vellum, inked in the names of forts and rivers, and believed this act of inscription was the same as possession. We were fools. The world is not made of ink and parchment. It is made of older things, of tooth and stone, and a sky that does not answer to the names we give it. My name is Caelan Varus. I was, for a time, a respectable functionary in the Imperial Legion, attached to the Quartermaster Corps. My work was not glorious. It did not involve the clash of steel or the intricate dance of politics in the white gold tower. It was quiet, meticulous, and, I believed, ridiculous and essential. An army that does not know the land it fights on is a blind beast, swinging at shadows. I gave the Legion its eyes. I translated the raw, chaotic wilderness into predictable grids, into elevations and distances that a commander could understand. I brought order to the world, 1 league at a time. It was a clean and noble purpose. The assignment came on a gray morning in the Imperial City, a day when the air itself seemed weary. The summons was from Captain Valerius, a man carved from the same granite as the city walls. He was old, his face a road map of forgotten campaigns, his loyalty to the idea of the Empire as pure and unyielding as a drawn sword. He did not see the rot, or perhaps he saw it and chose to ignore it, believing that duty was a strong enough mortar to hold the crumbling bricks together. His office was sparse, smelling of old leather and beeswax. A grand map of Tamriel covered one wall, its edges frayed, its colors faded. It was a map of a world that no longer truly existed, a world united under one banner. Now it was a tapestry of rebellion, secession, and silent resentment. He stood before it, his back to me, a silhouette against a dying dream. "Varus," he said, his voice the gravelly sound of a boot on a stony road. He did not turn. "You are the best we have, the most precise. Your lines are clean." I stood at attention. "Thank you, Captain. This is not a compliment, it is a statement of fact, and it is why you are being given this task." He finally turned, his eyes the color of a winter sky. He gestured to a smaller, more detailed map of Skyrim laid out on his desk. His finger, thick and scarred, tapped a region in the far west, a place where the mountains clawed at the sky. "The Reach. This valley," he said, "is a blank space on our maps. The Nords call it the Hjalmarch Scar or some such nonsense. Superstitious drivel. But it is strategically important. It provides a potential back door into High Rock and a potential staging ground for the Stormcloak rebels. We need to know it. We need to own it. I want you to chart it. Every rock, every stream, every pathetic little goat trail. I want that blank space filled with Imperial ink." I looked at the map. The area was a void, surrounded by jagged contour lines that suggested treacherous terrain. It was deep in territory that was, at best, hostile. "Captain, the local garrisons are stretched thin. A surveying mission of this nature, so deep in contested land." "We'll be provided a local guide," he finished, cutting me off. "A Nord woman. Supposedly knows the area better than the hawks that circle it. She will keep you alive. Your job is not to fight. Your job is to draw, to observe, to record. The Legion needs to know what is in that valley." He leaned forward, his gaze hardening. "There are rumors. Whispers carried on the wind from Helgen. Talk of dragons. Stormcloak propaganda, no doubt, a myth to frighten, to the peasantry and galvanize their pathetic rebellion. But fear is a weapon, Varus, and the best way to disarm it is with truth, with facts, with a map, a dragon. The word felt alien in that sterile, orderly room. It was a word from children's stories, from the faded tapestries that hung in the great halls, depicting heroes of a bygone age. It was not a word that belonged in a military briefing. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air, a faint, almost undetectable tremor in the deep foundations of my reality. I dismissed it as nerves. "I understand, Captain," I said. "I will prepare my instruments." "Good," he grunted, turning back to the grand map of Tamriel. He seemed to be looking not at the continent but through it into the past. "The Empire was built on knowledge, Varus, on the certainty that we knew the world better than anyone else. Do not forget that. Bring order to that chaos." I left his office and walked through the stone corridors of the garrison. The soldiers I passed had a look I had come to recognize. It was not the confident swagger of the legions of old. It was a brittle sort of resolve, the posture of men who were holding a line they knew was about to break. They were defending not a vibrant living thing but a memory. And memories, like maps, can fade. My preparations were a ritual, a comfort in their familiarity. I checked my compass, its needle of enchanted lodestone quivering, always pointing to the unmoving truth of the north. I sharpened my charcoal sticks, their dusty blackness ready to capture the shape of the world. I inspected my rolls of vellum, their creamy surfaces smooth and unmarked, blank slates waiting for reality to be inscribed upon them. These were the tools of my faith, the articles of a creed that believed in a measurable, knowable universe. As I packed them into my oilcloth satchel, I felt a sense of purpose settle over me. The captain was right. Fear thrived in the unknown. I would drag this wild valley into the light of imperial reason. I would put it on a map, and in doing so, I would tame it. The journey north was a slow descent into a harsher world. The rolling, sun-drenched hills of Cyrodiil gave way to the grim, pine-choked mountains of Skyrim. The air grew colder, sharper, carrying the scent of snow and damp earth. The people changed, too. Their faces were harder, their eyes more guarded. They looked at my imperial armor not with respect, but with a sullen resentment. I was an agent of a distant foreign power, a reminder of a peace they no longer believed in. I arrived at the small imperial fort near Carthwaston, a miserable collection of damp stone and timber huddled against the mountainside. The wind was a constant presence, a mournful voice that swept down from the peaks. The soldiers here were not just holding a line, they were besieged by the land itself. Their commander, a weary Breton named Quintus, handed me a sealed parchment. "Your guide will be at the standing stones west of here at sunrise," he said, his voice flat. He did not seem to care about my mission. He was a man consumed by the daily struggle of survival. "Her name is Yordis Stonehand. Do what she says. These mountains do not forgive arrogance." He looked me over, his eyes lingering on my pristine cartography tools. "You think you can draw a line on this place and understand it? This land is old, Imperial. It remembers things we have forgotten. Be careful what you go looking for." That night I slept poorly. The wind howled around the barracks, and in its voice I thought I heard whispers, fragments of a language I did not understand. I clutched the compass in my hand, its cool metal a small anchor of logic in a sea of unease. I was a man of science, of empirical evidence. I would not be swayed by the superstitious fears of a backwater province. The world was governed by laws, by the predictable turn of the seasons and the unwavering pull of the north. I held on to that belief like a drowning man clings to a piece of driftwood. It was all I had. Sunrise found me at the appointed place. 3 great monoliths covered in weathered carvings of forgotten beasts and symbols reached for the pale sky. They hummed with a low energy, a feeling like the pressure in the air before a storm. Waiting for me was a woman who seemed as much a part of the landscape as the stones themselves. She was tall for a Nord, with braids the color of winter wheat threaded with small bones and stones. Her face was a mask of weathered lines, but her eyes were startlingly clear and blue, the color of glacial ice. She carried a heavy axe on her back and wore furs and leather that were practical and devoid of any imperial adornment. This was Yordis Stonehand. She gave me a single, slow nod. Her gaze was appraising, taking in my armor, my satchel, my clean-shaven imperial face. I saw no warmth in it, only a deep, abiding patience. "You are the madman," she said. It was not a question. Her voice was low and rough, like stones grinding together. "I am Caelan Varus of the Imperial Legion," I replied, trying to inject a note of authority I did not feel. She grunted, a sound of dismissal. "The Legion, your lines and your forts, they are scratches on the skin of this land, nothing more." She turned and gestured with her chin toward the jagged peaks to the east. "The valley you seek is that way. It is a quiet place. Too quiet. The animals have fled. The wind does not speak there as it should. It is a wrong place." "The Legion requires a survey," I said stiffly. "The Legion requires many things," she countered, her eyes never leaving the mountains. "This land does not care what the Legion requires. We will go. But you will listen to me. You will not touch the old stones. You will not drink from the silent streams. And when I tell you to be quiet, you will hold your breath until your lungs burn. Do you understand, madman?" I bristled at her tone, at the casual dismissal of my authority, of the entire Imperial project. But there was a certainty in her voice, a conviction born not of arrogance but of deep, ancient knowledge. I remembered the warning from the fort commander. I swallowed my pride. "I understand." "Good," she said. And with that she turned and began to walk, her stride long and sure-footed. I hurried to follow, my new leather boots slipping on the rocky ground, where her worn, fur-lined ones found purchase. We were walking away from the world of forts and borders, away from the comforting illusion of imperial control. We were walking into the blank space on the map, and the blank space was watching us. The first few days of the trek were a lesson in humility. The land was more rugged, more unforgiving than any contour line could ever convey. We scaled sheer rock faces where the wind threatened to peel me from my holds, and we waded through icy streams that leached the warmth from my bones. I was clumsy, loud, a creature of the city completely out of my element. Yordis moved through it all with a liquid grace, as if the wilderness were her natural home. She spoke little, communicating mostly through hand gestures and sharp, guttural commands. At night we made cold camps, for she forbade a fire. "The light draws attention," she would say, her eyes scanning the oppressive darkness that surrounded us. "And some things that see the light are not welcome." During the day I tried to do my work. I would stop at high points, unrolling my vellum and taking out my compass. I would sketch the ridge lines, the course of a river, the position of a notable rock formation. I was trying to impose my grid upon this place, to capture its wildness in the neat, predictable language of cartography. But the land resisted. The distances seemed to shift. A mountain that looked a mile away would take half a day to reach. The compass needle would sometimes shiver and drift, as if confused by some unseen magnetic interference. Yordis would watch me, her expression unreadable. "You are drawing the bones," she said once, as I meticulously shaded in the side of a mountain. "But you cannot see the spirit that lives within them." I dismissed it as more of her provincial mysticism. "It is rock and earth, Yordis. Its composition might vary, but it is knowable." She almost smiled, a faint, sad crinkling at the corners of her eyes. "You Imperials, You believe everything can be cut up, named, and stored in a box. You think knowledge is a thing you can own. Here, knowledge is a thing that can own you. As we pushed deeper into the valley, the wrongness she had spoken of became more palpable. The normal sounds of the forest faded away until the only sound was the crunch of our boots and the ceaseless sigh of the wind. There were no birds, no squirrels chittering in the trees. We came across the remains of a great elk, its massive skeleton picked clean, the bones arranged in a way that felt unnatural, almost deliberate. There were no predator tracks around it, just an eerie, profound stillness. Later we found scorch marks on a wide slab of granite. They were not the chaotic patterns of a lightning strike. They were sharp, angular, like a script written in fire. I knelt to examine them, my fingers tracing the strange, unfamiliar characters. They felt warm to the touch, despite the biting cold. "Do not touch that." Yordis's voice was sharp, urgent. I snatched my hand back as if burned. She was staring at the marks, her face pale. She began to murmur something in the old Nord tongue, her hand making a small, protective gesture over her heart. "What is it?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "A word," she said, her eyes wide with a fear that was more profound than anything I had ever witnessed. A word of power, spoken by a tongue that should not be. From that moment on, the journey changed. The unease I had felt curdled into a genuine, creeping dread. I felt a constant pressure on my senses, a weight in the air that made it hard to breathe. I felt watched, not by a simple predator, but by the land itself. The mountains were no longer just geological formations. They were silent, brooding giants, their peaks wreathed in mist like shrouds. The sky seemed too close, a vast, empty canvas of gray that pressed down on us. My maps began to feel like a child's foolish game. What good were lines on parchment against this suffocating, ancient presence? My belief in a rational, ordered world was a flickering candle in a hurricane. I stopped sketching as often. My hands had begun to tremble, and the clean lines I was so proud of came out jagged and uncertain. I found myself watching Yordis, looking for cues, for reassurance. She offered none. Her face was a grim stone mask, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon, searching for a threat I could not see, but could feel in the marrow of my bones. One evening, as dusk bled across the sky in hues of bruised purple and orange, we crested a high ridge. Below us lay the heart of the valley. It was a wide, desolate plateau, unnaturally flat, strewn with a collection of colossal black stones. They were arranged in a shattered circle like the broken teeth of some long, dead leviathan. They were ruins, but not of any castle or fort I had ever seen. They were older, their architecture alien and imbued with a deep sense of menace. The air here was different. It was thick, electric. A low hum vibrated through the soles of my boots, a thrumming that was felt more than heard. My compass, when I dared to look at it, was spinning uselessly, its needle a frantic blur. Yordis stopped dead, her hand gripping the handle of her axe. "This is it," she breathed. "The wrong place, the heart of the silence." I should have been working. This was the center of the blank space, the very location I had been sent to chart. I should have been taking bearings, sketching the layout of the ruins, making notes, but my tools felt heavy and useless in my hands. My mind, which had always been a fortress of logic and reason, was a chaotic mess of fear. I could not think. I could only feel. I felt the immense age of this place, the weight of forgotten eons pressing down. I felt the profound cosmic indifference of the stones. We were insects crawling on an altar built for gods we could not comprehend. "We should not be here," Yordis whispered. "The old tales. They say this is where the world was born and where it will be unmade." Before I could answer, the world begins to change. The humming in the ground intensifies, rising in pitch until it is a physical pressure in my skull. The wind, which has been our constant companion, dies. It does not trail off. It is cut suddenly and completely. The silence that follows is absolute, a vacuum that pulls at my eardrums. The light shifts. The gray overcast does not darken with storm clouds. It curdles, it thins, becoming a sickly, translucent film through which the very stars seem to leak, cold and distant, even in the middle of the day. Time itself feels thick, sluggish, like wading through cold honey. And then I see it. It is not flying. It is not moving through the air. The sky is tearing open, and it is the tear. A shape of impossible geometry, a living piece of midnight pulled from the void between the stars. It descends upon the plateau, and with its coming it brings the true cold. Not the simple cold of Skyrim, but the absolute zero of the grave. A cold that extinguishes heat and hope alike. It is a dragon. But that word is a child's toy, a pathetic attempt to name the unnameable. Its scales are not scales, they are shards of obsidian, each one swallowing the light and reflecting nothing. Its horns are twisted spires of jagged rock, old and weathered as the mountains themselves. Its wings, vast and membranous, are not for catching the wind, but for eclipsing the sun. And its eyes are twin embers of fading creation, glowing with the patient, malevolent intelligence of a dying universe. This is Alduin. I do not know how I know the name, but it blooms in my mind like a black flower of poison. The name is a wound. It lands among the circle of black stones, and the impact is not a sound. It is a concussion, a wave of force that ripples through the ground and slams into my chest, stealing my breath. The creature is immense, larger than any building, larger than any living thing has a right to be. It pays us no mind. Yordis has fallen to her knees beside me, her head bowed, her hands pressed flat against the frozen earth. Her lips are moving, but no sound comes out. It is not prayer. It is surrender. My mind is screaming. Every principle of logic, every law of nature that I have built my life upon is being systematically dismantled before my eyes. This thing cannot exist. It is a physical impossibility, a paradox of flesh and shadow. I feel my sanity fraying, the threads snapping one by one. I am an ant watching the moon fall from the sky. My map still clutched in my hand is a meaningless piece of paper. My compass, a child's bauble. My empire, a speck of dust. The World Eater turns its head, a slow geological movement. It looks at the ancient weathered stones of the ruins. And then it speaks. The sound is not a roar. A roar is a thing of lungs and throats. This is a word, a single syllable of pure power that erupts from its being. The air cracks. The very fabric of reality seems to warp around the utterance. Dur ne vir. The word does not travel to my ears. It is injected directly into my soul. It is a command that means more than its translation. It means curse never dying. It means to bind in undeath. It means I am your God and I decree your eternal servitude. The meaning floods me and I understand it, with a clarity that is itself a form of madness. In response to the word, the stones of the ruin begin to glow with a faint, sickly purple light. The ground trembles, not from an earthquake, but as if something deep beneath the surface is stirring in its sleep. I can feel it. A legion of dead things awakening to the call of their master. Alduin is not here for us. We are nothing. We are motes of dust, irrelevant. He is here on business older than mankind, older than the mountains. He is performing some ancient, terrible rite. He is a king inspecting his domain, a farmer tending to his crop of souls. He raises his head to the tattered sky and lets out a true roar. And this time it is a sound, a physical force that scours the plateau. It is the sound of mountains breaking. It is the sound of stars being extinguished. It is the sound of all hope dying. It washes over me, through me, and in that moment I am unmade. The man known as Caelan Varus, Imperial cartographer, ceases to exist. There is only a vessel of pure primal terror. Then, as suddenly as it arrived, it is gone. It does not fly away. It simply unfolds its wings of shadow and dissolves into the sky, leaving behind a silence that is heavier, more profound than before. The sickly light in the stones fades, the humming ceases, the world, fractured and violated, settles back into a semblance of normalcy, but it is a lie. Nothing will ever be normal again. I lay on the frozen ground for a long time, my mind a hollowed-out cavern. The sky was just a gray sky again. The wind began to blow, cold and indifferent. But I knew that what I had seen was the truth, and everything else, the empire, the war, my maps, my life, was the illusion. We were living in the final moments of a dream, and the dreamer was beginning to stir. The journey back was a fugue state. Yordis hauled me to my feet. Her face was ashen, her eyes filled with a terrible, ancient light. She did not speak of what we had seen. There were no words for it. We simply moved, two ghosts fleeing a graveyard. The dangers of the wilderness that had so terrified me on the way in now seemed mundane, almost comforting. A wolf, a cliff edge, starvation, these were understandable threats. They were part of a world that made sense. But we were coming from a place where sense did not apply. I did not touch my maps. The vellum felt like a lie in my hands. The charcoal felt like dust. How could I draw a line to represent a mountain when I knew that the mountain itself was just a temporary shape, subject to the whims of forces that could unmake it with a word? How could I mark a river's course when I knew the entire world was flowing toward a singular dark oblivion? When we finally stumbled back into the Imperial outpost, the soldiers barely recognized me. My face was gaunt, my eyes wild. I had aged a decade in as many days. Quintus, the commander, took one look at me and ordered the healers to sedate me. They said I had mountain fever, that the isolation and the cold had broken my mind. I tried to tell them. I tried to make a report. I sat in Quintus's office, the same place where he had warned me, and I tried to explain. The words would not come. How do you describe a color you have never seen? How do you explain a sound that is also a concept? There was a thing, I stammered, my hands shaking so violently I could not hold a quill. In the sky. It was black. It spoke. Quintus listened with a weary patience, the look one gives a delirious child. A storm, Varus. You were caught in a bad storm. It can play tricks on the mind. No, I insisted, my voice cracking. It was a dragon. The World Eater. Alduin. He sighed, the sound of a man who had heard too many tall tales. The Stormcloaks have been spreading those stories for months. It seems their propaganda is more effective than I thought. Rest, cartographer. Your mind will clear. They took my satchel, my beautiful, useless maps. They declared my mission a failure due to mental incapacitation. I was sent back south under guard, a broken man, a madman. Captain Valerius in the Imperial City refused to see me. My report was filed away as the ravings of a fever-addled mind. The Imperial machine, in its infinite grinding logic, could not process a truth so vast and terrible. It had no box to put it in, no label to affix to it. So it simply ignored it. But I could not ignore it. The encounter had burned itself onto the inside of my skull. When I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow eclipsing the sun. When the wind howled, I heard the echo of that terrible word. The world had become a thin veneer, and I could see the terrifying reality that lay just beneath its surface. I saw it in the cracks in the cobblestones, in the way a shadow stretched in the late afternoon, in the vacant look in a beggar's eyes. Everything was a reminder of the fragility of our existence. I was discharged from the Legion. I wandered Cyrodiil for a time, a ghost haunting the edges of a society that seemed absurdly preoccupied with its petty squabbles. Wars, politics, commerce. It was all the frantic activity of mayflies dancing on the surface of a deep, dark pond, oblivious to the Leviathan rising from the depths. My obsession drove me to libraries, to hidden collections of lore. I needed to understand what I had seen, to find a framework, however flimsy, to contain the madness. Most scholars dismiss the old prophecies as myths, but I found one, a reclusive Altmer academic named Caelan who lived in a dusty tower crammed with forbidden texts. He listened to my story not with disbelief but with a predatory intellectual hunger. His eyes gleamed with excitement, not fear. "Incredible," he breathed when I finished, his long, slender fingers steepled beneath his chin. "To have witnessed it firsthand. The prophecy of the dragon's return is not merely a metaphor, then, it is literal." He pulled down a heavy leather-bound tome, its pages brittle with age. He showed me the ancient Akaviri prophecies, the Elder Scrolls' opaque predictions. He spoke of the cycle of the Kalpas, of the world being devoured and reborn. He used words like eschatology and cosmogony. He was trying to do with books what I had tried to do with maps, to categorize the apocalypse, to render it into a neat academic discipline. "The word you heard," he said, his eyes alight, "Dur-Nevir. It is a name, of course, one of the lieutenants. The shout was a summons. He was not destroying Varus. He was recruiting. He is gathering his army." Caelan's words offered a kind of cold comfort. They confirmed I was not insane. But they also confirmed that the world was ending. He saw it as a fascinating intellectual problem. I saw it as the abyss that had swallowed my soul. I left his tower more knowledgeable but no less broken. His understanding was a cage of words built around a hurricane. The hurricane was still real. I left Cyrodiil. I could no longer stand the pleasant sunlit denial of the heartland. I returned to Skyrim. I do not know why. Perhaps a part of me needed to be closer to the wound, to the place where the truth had been revealed. I am a pilgrim drawn to a terrible holy site. I no longer carry the tools of a cartographer. My hands are steady now, but I have no desire to draw lines on a world I know to be an illusion. I work odd jobs, chopping wood, cleaning stables, always keeping my head down, always watching the sky. The Nords talk openly of the dragon attacks now. It is no longer a rumor. The war with the Empire seems like a distant, irrelevant noise. Everyone is beginning to feel the deep chill I felt on that plateau. The world is getting colder. Sometimes I wander out into the wilderness. I find the ancient standing stones, the barrows where the old kings sleep. I touch the cold rock and feel the echo of that hum, the resonance of that terrible power. I am not a hero. I am not the dragonborn of the prophecies. I am just a witness, a man who was sent to map a small piece of the world and instead saw the map of its ending. I have a single tattered piece of vellum left from my old life. On it is not a map, but a single angular word I painstakingly copied from the scorched rock on that mountain pass. The word Yordis told me not to touch. I do not know what it means, but sometimes in the dead of night, when the fear is a physical presence in my room, I trace its shape with my finger. I do not say it aloud, I would not dare, but I feel its power, a sliver of that world-unmaking grammar. My name is Caelan Varus, or it was. That man is gone. He died in a valley that was not on any map. I am what is left, a quiet observer in the twilight of an age. I wait and I watch the sky because I know what the shadows there truly mean. The Empire thinks it is fighting a war for Skyrim. They are wrong. They are all wrong. The war is already over. We just do not know it yet. We are all just ghosts, living in the ruins of a world that has already been devoured.